My name is John Rogers. I'm an environmental manager with the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, and we'd like to welcome you to our Uinta Basin Collaborative meeting. I think we have some good speakers today, and we're going to learn a lot. So I first want to thank Duchesne County for providing this wonderful facility and also the morning breakfast and snacks. So that's always appreciated on a cold morning and long drive out here. We have a very good meeting today based a lot on air quality and rulemaking. With government agencies, there's always rulemaking, so we're trying to make that the best approach to have and be open with that. I'd like to recognize right now, I saw Representative Watkins. Where are you at? I saw you. Oh, she stepped out. Well, we appreciate her support along with Senator Winterton. From our board, we have Al Walker. Raise your hand out. We appreciate your support being out here. And also our director, Mick Thomas. Where you at, Mick? Right there. So appreciate their support here. Before we get started, I always like to give a little bit of background. Sorry you were late, but there she is. Appreciate you. Before we get started, I always like to give a little bit of background on what's happened in the division this year and where we're headed with the industry. And so I've put a few slides together, very short. I know data can be very boring, but at this point, I think it's good to see where we're headed compared to where we've been a few years ago. So. Get started. It's a little awkward up here because I can't use the pointer without. Oh, can I reach over? Okay. Here we are with oil production. Year to date, which was not really now. Right now we're looking at August numbers, so it's about halfway through the year because our data somewhat lags. But if you look back there, what's that about? August? I don't know. I guess I should get my glasses. Where'd they go? Sorry, I'll be flying free up here. But back in the COVID days, you see that big dip down there? And look how we've climbed up out of there. If you look at the last year, 23, we set a record. That was about 50, Bart, what was that, 54 million? 56, okay? And so we thought, wow, now if I take those numbers and look at what we're at now through halfway through the year of 24, we're going to project to about 63. So another record on site. So oil production is way up. So if you're wondering where we were and where we've been, it's been a very positive trend. Let's look at gas production. We have bounced up now fairly flat, but we're right around 25 million MCF a month. So we can look at gas production has really remained stable, and that's a vital component of our industry out here and in the state. And we look at pricing now. This is something that has been up and down, but right now in the last 6 months, we've seen kind of a trend down. When I ran this report, we were at $69 a barrel roughly. So we had a trend over the last few months, but with the changes in Washington, what's going to happen? Who knows where that will push that. That could even push it down further, being that production probably will go up. There's always a supply and demand. So we always keep an eye on the price of oil, and this is WTI, not what we get out here. We can't really find out what we're getting in the Wasatch Front. They used to post that, but now they don't. So we kind of follow WTI as the closest parameter. Give you an idea where we're at with spuds. We can see right now we're at 2024, 122 year to date. And if we project that out just for the last month of the year, 133. So we've seen our spuds go down a little bit, but probably due to the capacity trying to get the oil out of the basin, it's just not enough right now, so it's somewhat limited that. We look at permits are 388, and we have now projected out to 423. We had a record a few years ago of 2,000, but that was more of an era where people were just getting permits just to get permits. Now I think we've trended back on that, and the permits are more under control, so we see there. And here is something very important to us at the division, is the number of inspections we do. We can see right now we're up to 10,373, projected 11,000. And those inspectors do a great job out here. And I saw a few of them here today. Bart, where are they at? Stand up. I want our field staff to stand up. And I'm not going to stop till you guys stand up. Where else? Who else we got? There's over here. Who else we got here, Bart? We appreciate them. They are eyes on the ground out here and keep us informed on the Wasatch Front what's going on. So they are a vital component of what we do. So appreciate it. Thanks. So that's where we're at. We see that the industry's taken a big turn since our COVID days, and it's really it's really good to see, because I remember the day when oil went negative 39. I'm going, man, well, that's a misprint, right? And I thought it was over. I thought we'd just pack up and go away. But boy, we've rebounded greatly. So it's a lot to do with the industry we have out here, the support we have between our agency and what we do. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate your support here today. So there's where we're at division-wide. We're doing well. So we'd like to continue on with our program today. Our first speaker will be Ting Xiao from EGI, and she's going to talk about the CarbonSAFE program. So Ting, leave that to you.
Good morning. I'm very glad to stand here again and talk about some results of our project. My name is Ting Xiao. I'm a research assistant professor from the Energy and Geoscience Institute. So, today I will introduce some early stage risk assessment for our project. First of all, I want to introduce our institute. We are a University of Utah Research Institute, and we research on sustainable energy and mineral production. And we have three major research focus, including energy, fluids, and minerals, geothermal, and carbon management. If you are interested in our institute, please feel free to scan this QR code and learn a bit more. And we also have some flyers on that table. Just feel free to take one. So first, before I talk about my results, I would like to acknowledge the funding from our project provided by the U.S. Department of Energy. And our project is called Uinta Basin CarbonSAFE. So maybe many of you already noticed this project. Our goal is to try to study the feasibility of storing at least 50 million metric tons CO2 in saline aquifers over 30 years in the Uinta Basin. And right now we are studying the technical and economical feasibility. And I want to mention that our project is one of the 83 CarbonSAFE projects in the U.S., and you can have a look at where these projects are. They are basically across the United States. And all the projects have the same purpose, is to potentially store at least 50 million metric tons CO2 in deep saline aquifers. So here is our project overview. We are targeting in the area near to the Bonanza Power Plant, and our proposed CCUS site is on the Sitla block. In this area, there are not many wells go very deep. Most of them are shallow for oil and gas production. But with only a few wells available for us to study, we just learned the geology there, and we found there are nuggets and intrada sandstones down below the Mancos Shale. So they are great targets for CO2 storage in deep saline aquifers. And the Mancos Shale will become the primary sealing formation, which is very thick, and it will become very secure for potential CCS. And we also work in the city of Vernal, which is the nearest population center. We try to engage more stakeholders there. And we noticed that there is a dinosaur national monument as well. We study the geology of outcrops there. So it's amazing. The intrada and the nugget sandstones are on the surface there. So what I focus on is the risk assessment of our future CCUS development. And this is the workflow of a normal risk assessment. We try to identify potential risks, and we do assessments. And then we make some plans to try to mitigate any potential hazard. And we have risk response planning. And we also design some monitoring and further characterization activities. After all these activities, we go back and re-evaluate our identified risks. So We usually, at this stage, we usually use qualitative assessment methods, and features, events, and processes registry is widely used. And each FEP could generate the negative impact on the project through different chains of scenarios, and they can impact each other. And try to qualify their impacts, we use this 2D registry matrix. We evaluate their likelihood, which is how possible they happen, and their severity, and which means once this event happens, how bad it will cause the damage. And everybody has their own bias, so we try to provide some guidance of what's the scores that we want to give for each FEP. This is for the likelihood, and this is the description for the severity. And because our project is highly we want to communicate with stakeholders as much as we can. We highly depend on the local communities. So we want to add the two-way stakeholder and or public communication and engagement in our research. So with this scope, we try to recruit as many respondents as we can to participate with our risk assessment. So we developed the online risk questionnaire, and we identified 138 FEPs. Then we tried to recruit respondents from the local area. So we had our project kickoff meeting in Vernal, and I announced this questionnaire on this meeting, as well as we recruited respondents from the University of Utah CCUS class, and I invited experts from other CCUS projects in the US. So luckily we got more than 60 people participating in our questionnaire, and we got 42 valid respondents. So here are some background information about our respondents. Most of them have higher education, and many of them have multi-years either CCUS experience or oil and gas industry experience. We luckily have 5 Uinta Basin residents who participate in our questionnaire. We very appreciate that, but hopefully next time we can recruit more people. And about half of the respondents are from our project, and most of them are from the academia. But still, we have some feedbacks from industry and government. So thank you very much if you have participated in our study. And I think today it's the time I pay back. I want to share our findings with you. So here are some questionnaire results. Most FEPs under the economic, legal policy, social, and environmental categories were evaluated by all respondents. But with the technical and management categories, many FEPs received multiple ratings of not applicable or I don't know, because they may out of the respondents' expertise, so it's a little hard to really value them and give a rating. And a lot of the FEPs get high deviations. So for example, in some FEPs under economic category, they got likelihood 1 to 5. They get their severity 1 to 5. So basically, people have a lot of different opinions. But luckily, we have a pretty large number of respondents, so we can average them and get some average thoughts of each FEP. So here are the results from all the FEP we evaluate, and I show where they fall into. So most of the FEPs fall under the yellow zone, which is we feel these are risks, but they are not too bad. And we found most of the environmental FEPs fall under the green zone. So it means most of people don't think environmental issues will become risks in the Uinta Basin. The reason I interpret is this region is already developed for oil and gas industry, so people here are very familiar with this, and CCUS is something similar. And there are a few items under economics and legal policy category fall at the margin between the yellow zone and the red zone, so they are something a little more serious. And I also summarized some results from the local people. So although we got 5 respondents, we still can have some understanding of what local people think. And compared to the overall rating, we can see local people rates much less than the average number. So my interpretation is local people are pretty confident about the development of CCUS in the basin because they don't feel these items are big concerns. Similar results also shown from experts. So we define experts as either have 10 plus years CCUS experience or 10 plus years oil and gas experience. So their ratings are also a little less than the overall rating, which is also a good sign. So experts have a bit more confidence of developing CCUS in the basin as well. And here are some items, specific items I want to show. Because most people think the scores of severity times likelihood above 10 will be considered as high risk. So I just show all the items rated over 10 by all groups, either the residents or experts or project participants. So the first, so there are many items under the economic and policy legislation categories. I mean, these items are not specifically for the Uinta Basin, but also the nationwide or even world problems. So right now we don't have a great mechanism of developing this economy and develop this industry. So most of people feel it's risky of financial support, the carbon market and or CCUS legislation, the policy. But for, I'm very interested in the technology side. So I found the fractures and faults and their activation and growth are considered high risks by project participants and experts. So that means we are more concerned about potential induced seismicity or induced earthquake with the injection of CO2. But local people don't feel the same. They rated this item very low as their concern. So maybe they know better about the geology here. That's why they don't feel this is a concern. And also the project participants feel the local public opposition might be a big concern, but the local people don't vote this item as a high risk. So this is a very good sign for us. So it means the local people don't feel against about the development of CCUS in the basin. In the contract, the local people are more concerned about the rising prices of electricity and or petroleum. So this is a real concern, and who will pay for the cost of the capture and storage. So this is some item we want to research more and try to reduce the cost in the future. So these are some concerns of all the respondents. And also, we consider the risk value exceed 5 are considered not acceptable, and we need to have a treatment plan. But we found a few items not exceed the 5.0 score. Most of them are from the environment side. But we also found the job loss is considered a very low risk. So that means we all believe that the development of CCUS in the basin will generate more job opportunities. So this is also something very good. And then after all the FEPs described by our researchers, we also ask the participant to write down something they think important but not in our questionnaire. So there are two major aspects people are concerned. One is CO2 injection well material and construction. For example, people asking the casing cement material standards and or freeze-thaw processes. Another concern is the labor quality. For example, insufficient training or whether they have enough snacks during working. So for the first item, first concern, actually Utah is in the process of applying for Class 6 well primacy. And this picture was took on the Doggum open house night. So Utah government is working hard to try to guarantee the CO2 injection is safe and the well materials are safe enough and no leak will happen. And for the future labor, we want to announce that we already collaborate with UBTech as well as USU Vernal, and we are trying to develop some courses and trainings for future generation workforce. So hopefully when CCUS really develop in the basin, we have good quality laborers. And here are some lessons learned from our study. Because residents in the basin are already familiar with oil and gas production, and they show high receptivity to potential commercial scale CCUS projects. But like all places in the US, financial and legal policy risks are rated high to all respondents. Risk evaluation and rating may be a dynamic process. We should keep our communications and keep it effective, and maybe we can build some local relationships and confidence in the future. Also, we learned that stakeholders may need more information about the most up-to-date policies, for example, financial benefits from CCUS, the 45Q tax credit, and EPA Class 6 well permitting requirements. Our future research will emphasize education and workforce development, stakeholder engagement, and technical assistance. So with this conclusion, I would like to announce a new award in the Uinta Basin. It's called Regional Initiative for Technical Assistance Partnership, RITAP, to advance development of basin-scale carbon transport and storage and community engagement. So we will work very hard to provide technical assistance and to develop some education resources in the basin. As I mentioned, we already partner with the UBTech and USU Vernal. And the beauty of this award is that DOE allows we study the potential for CO2 EOR. So if anyone is interested in CO2 EOR or anything about CCUS, please feel free to contact me. And I want to also announce two other awards. One is they are all CarbonSAFE projects. One is in the Price area, the San Rafael Swell, and another one is near the Cedar City, the Iron Mountain iron facility. So if you are interested in these two projects, please also feel free to contact us. Eric, who is the PI of the Rocky Mountain CarbonSAFE, is also here today. So that's my update, and thank you very much. Do we have time for questions?
Sure. You mentioned that the experts' concerns were induced seismicity.
Yes.
And here in Utah, we've not had a problem with that so far with Class 2 injection wells.
Right.
Do you see a similar process between the two, or does carbon react differently?
Yes, so the reason that induced seismicity become a bigger concern than CO2 leakage is because a few years ago in Oklahoma, there are real earthquakes induced by produced water injection. So injection of water and CO2 are pretty similar. That's why we start to feel, oh, okay, the seismicity might be a bigger concern than CO2 leakage because of some real events.
Okay, Ting, could you go back to your last slide and just give a really quick comparison between the Price project and the Cedar City project and your project as far as magnitude and the scope of work?
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, every CarbonSAFE project has the same scope of study the feasibility of injecting at least 50 million tons CO2 in deep saline aquifers. So in the Rocky Mountain CarbonSAFE project, they will study the feasibility of capture CO2 from the Hunter and Huntington power plants and inject to the Navajo sandstone formation. And in the Cedar City one, EGI is partnered with the Iron Mountain and Fervo Energy, and they try to study the possibility of combining the capture of emissions from the steel industry and the direct air capture, and then injecting CO2 in subsurface. I'm not very sure of the potential reservoir, though, but we'll study the feasibility.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
So if you can go back to the Oklahoma wells and the induced seismicity on those Oklahoma injection wells, who owned those?
I don't know,
The
sorry.
EPA did. Yeah, they were federally owned and they were mismanaged. So when we talk about induced seismicity, we have to be very, very careful not to in any way create a hysteria that's just simply not there. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Might just point out the dollar amount because that's pretty small print.
Oh, okay. So the size of these projects are about $10 million each. So it's a big amount of money. And the RITAP award is about $5 million.
Ting,
Yes.
can you tell us more about those snacks? I'm just kidding. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how carbon sequestration projects are usually funded. Like, what's the model by which they become financially possible?
Yeah, so for this stage, the federal government provides most budget, and each of our project need to provide 20% cost share, so that can be from our university or industry. But after we go through stage 2 and 3, so currently we are all at stage 2, but after we go through stage 3 and apply for stage 4, we need to provide at least 50% cost share. So $1 federal money, that will get a comparison with the $1 from somewhere else. So at that moment, the industry needs to jump into this process. And finally, after the Class 6 well are drilled, the company should take away and become the lead. That's the process. Thank you very much, Seth.
Yes, I have a question about these carbon sequestration projects. About what is the well count that we're talking about for the projects, or is that kind of a flexible number that's kind of determined as the project progresses?
Yes, thank you for this question. So our goal is to drill as less as we can, because each Class 6 well is very expensive. We need to spend millions of dollars of each. So we will do a lot of simulation and to try to reduce the number of wells and try to maximize the injection capacity, but with less wells. But for now, with this 50 million metric tons target, we probably need to at least have 2 to 3 wells. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll now move on to a presentation by the UPA Latch the Hatch program by Rikki, Hrenko-Browning, and Grizz O'Lean.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Rikki Hrenko-Browning. I'm the president of the Utah Petroleum Association. I feel very formal and fancy up here on this platform now. This is a little new. Awesome. Big thanks to the division for giving us quite a chunk of time to talk about air quality today, especially when that's not directly within their purview, but certainly one of the main factors that's going to drive our ability to continue to grow the basin's oil and gas production. So very appreciative of that. I wanted to give an update on our Latch the Hatch program, and yeah, okay, just looking at what you're seeing. So you can see the folks that are up there. I know some of the logos from our key partners have changed recently, but we are 3 years into this program. So it was about 3 years ago, standing in this very room with some of our founding members actually here today in the audience, when we kicked off this program. And back at that time, we kind of took a look around the basin. We knew air quality was a big challenge. We had ozone challenges. We knew that the oil and gas industry is a big part of those precursor emissions. And so we came together and we said, what can we do? And at that time, Seth and his team over at USU had done a fantastic report and identified that it turns out we're leaving a lot of thief hatches open. Well, that seemed like some pretty easy, low-hanging fruit. We can certainly fix that. So we got together as a group with the main producers and we said, okay, well, let's talk about education, let's talk about training, let's get our partners, our hauling companies, all the operators involved. And that was really a launching off point. And in the last 3 years, this program has grown significantly. So making sure thief hatches are closed is definitely an important part of that, but we've taken it so much further. And we want to talk about some of the things that we've been doing under that program to really drive down emissions to allow us to continue producing here in the basin and provide that growth that John showed us this morning. So again, you can see the member companies. Those are the operators that have made the commitments under Latch the Hatch. And again, they're backward looking last winter, since we're focused on a winter problem here. We're also really excited. We know that WEM is going to be joining us going forward. So when you see the slide deck after next winter, we're going to be adding another partner here. And just a quick reminder about what the Latch the Hatch program is. So these are obligations that are voluntary, but they are obligations. So we have a menu of options, which we'll talk about in just a minute, that the producers look at and say, what fits within our operations, what makes sense within our assets to do, and we are going to commit to do those things. These are all above and beyond regulatory requirements as well, which is huge. So some of our cumulative metrics over the last 3 years, and I'm not going to read off all of these to you, but it's very exciting and very impressive to see what you folks have all done to really invest in our basin, invest in our air quality, and our ability to continue to grow here. A lot of signage, a lot of new gaskets, a lot of new valves to make sure that those hatches are actually closed and sealing properly. But then beyond that, there's some new things that we started doing that have now become really status quo. So one thing is LACT units, lease acquisition custody transfer. So we don't actually have to go up and open and close those hatches when we're unloading those tanks. That was something that when we started was pretty rare out here. And now, as we develop these larger wells with bigger production, it's pretty much status quo. Not for everyone, but for a lot of folks. Another big change is the flyovers. When we started this 3 years ago, we were not doing aerial surveys, and those have been incredibly successful. We've done a lot of lessons learned and sharing of information between our operators on those. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute to figure out kind of what equipment works better, what we're able to see better, and identifying those things are things that we would not see otherwise. So we can then promptly go out and fix any leaks that we do find. So a couple of the metrics that I wanted to really look at that, again, I think are hugely impressive that you all have delivered on. The first is the number of sensors. So when we started this in 2022, we had just a couple of sites that actually had sensors to tell you, oh, a thief hatch was left open, or oh, something blew open, somebody needs to get out there. We've got a lot of assets. It's hard to keep eyes on everything on a regular basis. So automating this, including it into our metrics and our data monitoring is really helpful. Today, in 2024, we've got over 400 sites that have these sensors. And then I mentioned LACT units. That's another huge one. When we started this in 2022, we had almost no sites that had this investment put into them. And now here in 2024, we've got almost 80 units. And as we continue to bring on new wells, that's just part of what we do now. Same thing on the flyovers. So on the left-hand side, what you're looking at is the number of flyovers that we've completed, and on the right-hand side, the number of leaks identified by flyovers. What we would love to be able to do, and we have not been able to quantify yet, is to look at the emissions reduced from when we fix those leaks, but there's a lot of challenges around how we quantify that. Very, very hard to know when it started, when it ended. Is it consistent, inconsistent? But what you can see that I think is really impressive is, again, back in 2022, we had almost no flyovers. This wasn't a thing we were doing in the basin. It was new technology. You would see it in some larger basins starting to take hold, but certainly not here. Today, our biggest producers are working these flyovers into their regular schedule, so they're doing them multiple times a year and making that investment, and that's been really, really fundamental in helping us reduce emissions. So the Latch the Hatch program, as I said, is a menu of options, and even though we just started with thief hatches, as you can tell, we've grown it quite a bit. And as we look at what is next, now that we've been addressing a number of these issues to really reduce emissions, electrification is the next big challenge. It's the challenge for how we're going to be able to continue to reduce emissions, and it's the challenge of how we're going to be able to continue to grow the basin. So electrification is something we've started incorporating into our metrics. This is a growing program. If we have other opportunities for emission reductions, we will continue to add these into our program. But really impressive, just last year we had 906 sites that were partially powered by solar and 1,000 sites that were fully solar powered. That's impressive. I think we're going to continue to see growth in that, and that'll be a new metric that we will start to track and report back to all of you. And then you can see some of the other things that didn't come up across our entire metrics, but huge numbers: 835 retrofitted pumps, 2,000 pneumatic controllers removed, 41 compressors that had existing line power, which is not the case in a lot of areas, making that more challenging. We were able to remove those pneumatic devices, which again reduces emissions. And then I don't want to kind of steal Seth's thunder, but he's going to talk about their monitoring program, which we have found incredibly valuable. So we know when an ozone event is going to come, and we know roughly when we need to really, really prioritize in some operational changes that can drive emission reductions as well. And I'll let Seth talk about that, but it's very, very valuable. So on that note, just a reminder, we are about to enter the winter season. We have this checklist of things that we ask all of our members to think about, and there's probably things that aren't on this list, but there are some very specific things that we can do when we know an ozone event is coming to try and really drive down our emissions. And for those few critical days where we are having an inversion, it's really important that we make these kinds of actions and we reduce those emissions. So this is available on USU's website that I'm sure Seth is going to show. It's also available on our website, and if anybody wants any more information about this, we'd be happy to have it. So that's kind of my update on Latch the Hatch, but what I really wanted to spend most of the time on was giving you some examples of what some of our operators are actually doing under this program. So I've invited Grizzleline from CODA, sorry, I said Karis Grizz. I'm getting there, I'm slow. From CODA, he's the EHS field manager, and he's going to talk through some of the things that CODA has been doing as a kind of lessons learned and information sharing. And I'll just say we found that incredibly valuable in kind of sharing best practices and bringing all of our members along as we go. So Grizz, thank you. This one cues them.
Morning, everyone. I kind of feel like one of those people that call into radio shows. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Been coming to this meeting for a long time. First time I've had to talk. So, again, I'm with CODA GNB. We were purchased by, our Karis asset was purchased by CODA. So we are CODA GNB. We also have our CODA Red Wash asset to the north of us as well. And together, a lot of these projects, we're kind of working together on them. The Latch the Hatch program was a big one that we did put a lot of effort into. We put out a lot of signs out there in the field, a lot of education. I think that's the key part, is reaching out to your water haulers, to your operators, the different people that are going to be there on location. And those are the people that can really make sure that your hatches are closed for you as well too. And a lot of times they just didn't realize it. When you meet with these guys and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that was a problem. Okay, yeah, we can do that. That's easy. So that is a low-hanging fruit that you can do. Here's a few other projects that I'll get in a little more depth on some of these. The solar pump project, the liquid nitrogen, the flyovers or compressors. Another one's a recapture of western diaphragm pump exhaust. Another one also is a pneumatic inventory. We've been doing a full pneumatic inventory of our field. It's helped us to understand which pneumatics can be combined as far as your pneumatics count, also ones that are considered as a safety. So that can help you as well too, as far as your pneumatics count go. And also, it was really been a big effort, and it's been real helpful for us to understand on that end what we can consider as a single pneumatic, or we think we dropped ours in almost half as far as our pneumatic counts. So the GNB, our solar pump, power pump, we're basically replacing these Leon pumps, picture on your bottom left, and also these trace pumps there. They, the basic principle was that they move fluid, and they were really installed over 2016. Without some of these, we'd freeze off, and so that was kind of the purpose behind them. And if you'd have done the aerial flyovers before with these pumping, you'd have probably seen an emission source on every last one of our wells that had one of those on there. So what we switched to is we went to the Trido pump. And the Trido pump, the reason why they went with that is more for amperage more than anything, because battery life was a big thing on that one. So we were able to, install some solar panels with that, and went with a 24-volt battery on that. And I'd like to say that this was, I had a lot to do with this project, some of these, but I have to give credit where credit's due. We had some really good air people at Karis. Jerry Dismukes is awesome. Also Ron Allred, they both were some of the masterminds behind these projects. And so I'm just more of the guy here to be able to talk about what they did. They did a ton for us on that. So anyways, the solar panels, again, the batteries were a big issue, so we jumped from the 12 volt to the 24 volt, and that gave us more time on it in there. Some of your batteries didn't have much life on them, but anyways, this will replace a lot of those pumps there, really reducing it. And most of this was during the winter time is when when we're really worried about the ozone emission, in that time of year. And so that's when these pumps are really going into effect there. Really reliable. The solar panels are very helpful. And on days of, with the inversion, we do get a little bit of, doesn't work as great, but it's not a terrible thing. It doesn't totally shut us down. I think we installed these on all of our locations out there. So that was one of the bigger projects. This kind of shows you the heat trace pump signature. This was kind of an old one. You can see where it's coming off of there. When we installed it after, there's no emissions coming off of that as well too. The reduced saves were reduced it there. We figured out it was around 17.79 tons, and that's per pump, basically is what it was. So there's a lot of savings there as far as not pumping things into the air. The next one is our liquid nitrogen. This is a big project we've been working on for the last year. Basically, liquid nitrogen is going to it's going to power everything on your location there as far as your separator and that. And I'll get into a little more depth in that. And it's these big silver tanks what we went with. And it all depends on the size and how many wells you have and how many tanks you have there as far as what size you're going to install in there. It's automated, operator-free design. Didn't need a generator. Fraction of the cost compared to electrical air generation system. We installed 92 of these on our pad wells, basically what we end up doing. It replaces your instrument gas on the wells, and what it's based off of is the nitrogen has a 1% depletion rate. And they use that depletion rate to power the system, and we use that, and so we get more runtime on it. We're looking at, say, 3 months is what we're looking at trying to get on 1 tank of nitrogen, but that all depends on how many tanks you have and how much emissions you have coming off there as well. There's no moving parts, really reliable during the inversion time. We haven't had any issues with it. Pretty much year round, we've had actually good use of it. This is the nitrogen sizing. It's kind of a chart to show you where size of tank size, what size of nitrogen you'll need on it, bottom you need on it, kind of give you a rough estimate on the cost. But that's just a generic cost of, it may not be that bad on some of them. Some of them we might be able to stretch it a little further. Again, tanks are sized, they're optimized for that maximum vaporization rate to consumption rate ratio to provide that 3-month runtime. They have an algorithm built into it to monitor the system for a leak and for also refilling. So that way we can keep an eye on it, make sure we're not sitting out there, have a tank empty. And then for every device, it's not emitting. So out of all those 92 that we have, locations that we have it hooked up on, we don't have anything emitting on those. So it's proven to be 99% reliable in all weather conditions. Our aerial flyovers, that's one where, like Rikki said, it's been real interesting to see that. And when you go out, we got our LDAR guys that go out and investigate this, and when they go out there and look at it, it's interesting and very, very, very interesting to see what they can actually find. This last year, we did with GHG SAT, they had their Gen 2 camera, and it can do detection down to 10 kilograms per hour, but we've seen it even better that. We've seen it down to 4 kilograms per hour, basically would kick out. The scans are fully vetted before they send you the information. Here's one leak that we had on one of our major gas lines out there. And you can see that one, it was spitting out a little bit of produced water with it as well too. But we was able to catch that on that. And that was kind of a bigger one. This one was just that bull plug is all it was. We had another one on the red wash side where they couldn't find it when they went out looking with their LDAR cameras until they actually put soap bubbles on it, and that's when they started seeing it. So these cameras are really, really good, and they can really capture a lot of these different, whether it's a pipeline leak. It can also, when like this one here, it looks like, oh, that could be one leak there. No, we found out that was 3 different leaks on that one pipeline system there. So it was really easy to differentiate what it was, and it was really, really accurate. You know, like when the guys went out there, it was in that spot where they were looking at and where we were told it was at. Here's one where it was on. There was a thief hatch, I believe, that was open on that one. Easy fix on that one. We had one where a burner they just had turned on some of their winter equipment, and a pilot light had went out, burner had come on, or it was coming off that burner. Able to go out there and fix that. So it was easy to break it apart between the two there. So the solar compressor is another big one we put in there too. It can be in a Class 1, Div 1. It's put inside your separators. It's a power upgrade from a solar pump project for instrument air compressor retrofit. It's to try to get ahead of the Quad OC, reduce potential methane fee exposure. Really, it helps out during that wintertime ozone non-attainment area, and it can eliminate all your device accounts. Do I have any questions on those projects?
Grizz, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for presenting to us. So you know we try to make sure all the first-time presenters get lunch afterwards. So.
Appreciate it. I was looking for the snacks. I like the snack idea myself too.
So all jokes aside, thank you for presenting. But as I've been told, the basin can get a little cold in the winter, maybe a few days without sunshine. Talk about your switch to battery life and or from 12 to 24 volt, and how long will those batteries run, like without sunshine, and then maybe also how long are the batteries lasting once you install them?
Good question. That's a Ron Allred Moore question. We've only really had those installed for like, say, the past, it's been like a little over a year and a half, I believe. But we've actually had really good battery life on those. Because we went to the 24 volt, we get a little bit more battery life to fight through those inversion days. And that's why we jumped up from 12 volt to 24. And so we were able to get that time where we don't have any downtime between that during the inversion. Because generally we haven't had, say, the bad inversion where come January 1, we don't see the sun till March. You know, these have been pretty mild inversion years where we have a few days during the week and we can get some sunshine. So we've actually had pretty good battery life. There has been a little bit of downtime, but for the most part, it's been pretty good.
Grizz, no sweat. I don't have a question for you. I have something I wanted to add that I should have said previously. I just want to thank both DAQ and DAQOOOO, as well as our legislative friends here today. I think some of you, but maybe not all of you, know that last year the legislature made some changes with their tax incentives so that we can now have a sales tax incentive administered by the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining for pollution control equipment, which really helps support efforts like these. And I also made a misstatement. The study that really kicked off our Latch the Hatch effort was also a partnership with DAQ, and we really do see these as important partnerships with our regulatory agencies, and appreciate the legislature supporting our efforts to be able to fund things like this. So thank you.
And I did forget to mention that with that liquid nitrogen project, we're estimating around 4,000 pneumatics that we're eliminating. So you can eliminate quite a few. And with our aerial flyovers, we have a contract for the next 2 years to do 2 surveys, aerial flyovers per year. We found a lot of benefit in those, so we've decided to do that. And with those aerial flyovers, they basically grid it, and you can see that when they send it back. Sometimes we had the same signature show up twice, and it was because when their grid hit that edge of it, they would send it, you picked it up twice. So like I say, it's very, very accurate, and we found that it's been very useful. So that's why we're willing to put more money into it.
That was my question, just how many flyovers were you doing? Was it consistent?
Usually it's been yearly. In the past, it's been like once a year. And you try to do it where you're not having your winter equipment on, because then you're going to get a lot of signatures. So you try to catch it in May and then maybe September before you turn your winter equipment on. So, Dr. Lyman?
Yeah, so you talked about the liquid nitrogen systems and solar-powered pumps or compressors. To some extent, those seem to be different technologies to solve the same problem. Can you talk about why you choose one or the other in different cases, or what works better and things like that?
With the liquid nitrogen, I think it was more due to less mechanical issues. You know what I mean? The pumps you got to have a little more manpower dealing with the batteries. The liquid nitrogen is a whole lot easier to deal with versus having to worry about replacing the batteries. You pretty much go out there and refill your tanks, and that's kind of what you're looking at. And that's kind of why we went with the liquid nitrogen. It was more of a test, but we threw it out on all of our multi-well pads is the one we put it out on, and those are the ones that they're on now. But anyways, it was more due to that than anything, I think, more than not having to deal with replacing batteries every few years, that type of deal. Any other questions?
Would you be able to speak a little bit more about the economics of these solar compressors?
Yeah, the solar compressors, I'm trying to think on that one if I had as much on it. I don't have the economics on that one. There was some of the notes I didn't take, but I can get back to you on that one for sure. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, so I wanted to make a little bit of a question too. You know, to answer Seth's question on how do you decide. So I think if you look at our basin from east to west, obviously facility designs, excuse me, change pretty significantly, right? We're talking light condensates and gas to heavy waxy crudes the farther west we go. So I think that's a lot of what comes into play with what we can pick from an equipment standpoint and whether a solar setup works. I have some incredibly long trace runs that require a ton of heat, right? Double or triple what you might see on a gas well. So sometimes the solar application doesn't work for me, but I think one of the opportunities maybe we don't highlight here is I can still come in and replace 20 or 30 pneumatics with instrument air, run off of a Quad J compliant, super efficient little generator set, right? So it's still an emissions inventory win for me. That's one of the metrics I think we really should start tracking here as well, because sometimes those smaller pumps and the battery bank I would have to run a big pump just is not feasible cost-wise, and the equipment's not available at this point, right?
Yeah, and I think us getting together like this, talking about it, different operators, what works for each one is great because we can share ideas on this as far as what's going to work for us and others, and it just helps spark. You know, I've worked with Brian over there on the Greylock side, different things, and we're in this together as a whole industry, and so that's why it's great to be able to share this information with each other. So if you guys want to come look some of our stuff, we're more than happy to. We've got some other projects going up to the north where we're trying to run with the liquid nitrogen. It's basically run a line to a bunch of wells from like a big central tank. So we've got some different ideas out there we're trying, even up on the Redwash side as well too. So any other questions?
Is the maintenance the same, or is there less maintenance that you're having to provide for these new units?
Depending on which application it is, the maintenance on the methanol or the liquid nitrogen, there's very little maintenance on that one. Those we've just, because they've been so new, we haven't had a ton of maintenance on those. The pumps, they can go down. The batteries can go bad. If we have a solar battery panel that isn't working right, we've had a few of them blow over in the wind and shatter. And so you can have situations like that. We ended up going out there and having to anchor those down so we didn't have those blow over on those solar panels and whatnot, just to make sure we have them. And another one too is you don't have to go out there and clean off your solar panels if you get a lot of snow. That's one thing we run into as well, is we run out there having guys cleaning off solar panels so we can catch some sunlight, sometimes as well too. But it just depends on the project. Some aren't as much, some are a little bit more maintenance. But any other questions? I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Grizz and Rikki. We appreciate that. That was informative. I will now turn the time over to Sheila Vance from Division of Air Quality on updates and information on the Quad O rules.
Is that on there? Oh, I guess it's just tall. I'm not very tall. Good morning, Sheila Vance with the Utah Division of Air Quality. I think most of you have recognized me by now. I recognize a lot of you. And I really appreciate that previous presentation, because hopefully it'll make what I talk about a little less painful, because you all have been doing such great innovative work out here to try to be ahead of the game in terms of regulations. And I know we'd all rather see voluntary action be rewarded rather than more regulation, but unfortunately, there's a little synergy there where we are continuing to update regulations for the oil and gas industry. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about this. And I know one of the things since I've been coming out here and talking with you all is what industry and communities would like to see is consistency in, and not thinking of the right word, in the regulations, but we did just have an election, so that will probably change some things. But I ultimately think a lot of the things I'm going to talk about have been in the works for a while and are pretty well integrated into our world here in oil and gas, but there potentially will be some changes. But I will provide a status of where we are today. And so again, a lot of the Uinta Basin, a lot of this action has been based on the fact that we're a non-attainment area for the 2015 ozone standard. We are unfortunately still awaiting a decision from EPA on this. Final decision. They have proposed to determine this area being in attainment with the ozone standard. And unfortunately, that final decision is taking a while. I know they are responding to some comments they received during the public comment process, and I know they're trying to make sure that their response is iron tight and a good response. So I think I take that as a positive, meaning they're going to try to defend the decision they made and feel they can defend the decision they made. But that is taking time. And I do not have any idea of the timing. In the meantime, we just remain a marginal non-attainment area for ozone. The big thing we're working on at the Utah Division of Air Quality right now is a state plan that's going to be required for the new methane rules that had come out that we refer to as Quad O. There's a Quad OB and a Quad OC, and part of that is a plan we're required to put together and submit to EPA. And I think more currently, one rule has recently come out since I last spoke, and this is the waste elimination charge rule. This is a EPA rule, so it's not something the state of Utah will be involved in, but it is a charge for excess emissions of methane. It's a pretty complex rule in terms of how you determine that charge is being made. It was finalized just recently, and it will be in effect for the 2024 year of emissions. So there's a reporting requirement, a greenhouse gas reporting requirement that goes to EPA, and certain companies that are above a threshold are required to report their greenhouse gas emissions to EPA, and now there's a charge associated with what is considered above your regulatory threshold that you're allowed to emit. Again, I'm not that familiar with it, but how it kind of ties to the work I'm just going to talk about is there are exemptions that will be there once facilities are in compliance with Quad O, and once all the states in the United States have submitted a Quad OC plan to EPA and it's been approved, if you're in compliance with the Quad O rules, then that charge is eliminated or waived. So let me just dive into a little bit. Again, these methane rules, the final rule was published December of 2023. There's the two parts. Quad OB is for new sources, and not so new, really, because they use the date of December of 2022 forward, is considered a new source. Anything that exists prior to that December 2022 date would be considered an existing source. Our numbers here in Utah, we're looking at about 70 facilities that have come into existence since that December date. There's also some rules about whether you've modified your facility or not that would also bring you into Quad OB. So that is for new sources. And we're about 3,500 designated facilities under Quad OC that are under state jurisdiction again. The federal facilities that are under EPA jurisdiction, that'll be handled by EPA. I'll just be focusing on state jurisdictions. So again, this is oil and natural gas production, processing, transmission, and storage. This is what these rules cover, not the distribution aspects. Quad OB is addressing VOC and methane emissions. Quad OC is just addressing methane emissions. though they're very similar because most of the controls and such that are effective for VOCs are also effective for methane. So they're very similar processes. And so the Quad OB sources needed to be in compliance as of May 7th of this year. So again, the types of facility and equipment and activities that we cover: compressor stations, oil and natural gas well sites, natural gas processing plants, pneumatic controllers, pneumatic pumps, storage vessels. So the things that Grizz and Rikki were just talking about, the work that they're doing will allow them to become in compliance with these rules. So it's great to hear the progress that is being made. The rules are also focused on fugitive emissions, so the leaks that you're finding through these aerial surveys. So that's very impressive, the work that's being done also there. And associated gas needs to be controlled under these rules. And there's an interesting new program that EPA put out with these rules called a super emitter program. And this is where third parties can become certified by EPA. And then those third parties, using remote sensing, they're not allowed to go on to facilities or such, but they can go out and look for leaks and report those leaks to EPA, and then EPA will be in contact with the operator, and then there's some time limits for the operator to respond and get back to EPA. The hope with this program is to try to address what has been talked about for years about how 80% of the emissions are from 10% of the leaks, because they're trying to get these larger leaks that maybe aren't caught through quarterly inspections or other ways. That's kind of an interesting new program under these rules. So briefly, just the required state plan. There's model language they've provided to us, and then we take that language and incorporate it into our state rules. Again, like I said, these emission guidelines cover affected facilities in a fairly similar manner than they are under Quad B. We're required to get to that plan to EPA by March of 2026, and full compliance with all the facilities under this plan by March of 2029. So the idea being, we get rules in place, plans in place, get it to EPA, and then there's a 3-year time frame for compliance. And then again, if EPA determines our plan doesn't meet the standard, they will then issue a federal plan. So just briefly, the plan itself there's certain things that we have to talk about. And so we have to provide a compliance schedule under this plan. So for those 3,500 facilities, we need to tell EPA the compliance schedule for each designated facility, that the standards of performance we put in our rule are as at least stringent as the emission guidelines EPA has provided. We will have performance testing, monitoring, record keeping, and reporting requirements in our rules that meet the requirements. The fact that we have done some meaningful engagement on these rules and the rules and the plan. And then we provide progress reports to EPA of how we're doing, and then we have to ensure that we have the ability to enforce these rules. That's the plan we're required to submit in March of 26. And just briefly, we're in the engagement process right now. So like today, talking about these rules, reaching out to operators, reaching out to communities, reaching out to all interested stakeholders about these rules and receiving input. We are looking to have an advance notice of our draft rules February, in a few months here, to where we'll put out the rules in advance and allow folks to give us input and discuss them, with the hope of having a good set of rules to bring to our air quality board in the summer. June is what we're aiming for, to get those rules to our air quality board, get those out for public comment, and hopefully have final rules in the fall of 25. And what this does is allows us to get the plan to EPA in time, because we have to have the rules in place prior to submitting the plan. So again, we're in this engagement part. Our hope is by the winter of 25, we're ready with that plan. We'll have the rules in place, and we'll present that plan to our air quality board, have a public comment period, and meet our deadline of March of 2025 and get that plan to EPA. Our current plan right now is, like I mentioned, to incorporate the emission guideline requirements into our current rules we have. We call it the 500 series that we have currently. And the idea behind that is if we can incorporate those rules, we can maintain our permit by rule program we have, which I believe has worked well for both operators as well as us as a division. So we want to maintain that. Permits, again, hopefully we don't have to change permits. Our hope is if you have a permit, you'll just have to still be required to meet the rules we write. So like compressor stations and such, the larger facilities have permits. These rules will just be applicable to those folks with permits. We have to add methane as a pollutant, which is something we haven't done in Utah. We haven't considered methane a pollutant. And right now our plan is you can have an earlier compliance date if you wish as a state. Our plan is to currently give as much time as possible to make sure folks can get into compliance by the March of 2029. We have no plans currently to make that date sooner. And there'll be new rules for compressor stations and natural gas processing plants that aren't currently in our rules. And I just want to say that we have had 3 public meetings so far on these. I held one in Roosevelt, and we held one down in Moab, trying to reach out to the southeastern portion of the state. And then we did have a virtual public meeting. The virtual was very well attended. I will say the public one's not so much, but I had a really good time in Moab. I did have some attendees and we had a good conversation, but anyway, we're doing our best to try to reach out to people that maybe we don't normally talk to, because we tend to talk to a lot of the larger operators. We really want to make sure the smaller operators have knowledge of these and we can help them understand these rules and help them understand how to come into compliance with them. We do have a web page that I'll continue to put new information on. There's a QR code at the end of my slides, but hopefully if you just go to the DEQ website and search oil and gas, you should get to the web page. And there also on that web page, there's an opportunity to submit written comments. We're looking at a December 13th timeframe. Just want to make sure we have as much input prior to us putting draft rules out. And the current concerns I've been hearing in these meetings, a lot of it is these older, low-producing facilities that do not have access to electricity. A lot of the rules, such as zero-bleed pneumatics, are going to be very difficult for facilities to come into compliance with without electricity, without installing an air compressor or a nitrogen system. And these obviously have costs, capital costs, and there's a lot of them. So how can we help these folks get into compliance? And there is some flexibility in the rules that we're hoping will allow at least a longer time frame to come into compliance. We can look at costs versus emission reductions and potentially, hopefully, give folks longer time periods to come into compliance. And then I think that third-party super emitter program, I've heard from a few folks, what's the state's role going to be in that? And unfortunately, those are discussions we're having with EPA right now because we don't fully understand that. But we, again, if this is a program we're running, we would like to be the ones running it, not EPA. But that is still to be determined. And that is all I have for today. And this code will get you to that website. And I will take any questions.
Hey, Sheila, quick question. You made a comment that if the state isn't able to meet all of the requirements, that we would have a federal rule come in. Does this follow the same kind of process and timelines for other SIPs, that if something is insufficient, you can get a partial disapproval and a rework period, 18 months? How does that work?
Yeah, thanks. And I didn't go into detail on that, but they technically refer to the SIP rules for this plan. So we would have a similar process that they could approve some of it and then we could negotiate and work. So it wouldn't be a bam, you don't get it and here's your federal rule. So yeah, appreciate that.
Hi, Sheila. Mick Thomas, Director, Oil, Gas, and Mining. Thank you all for coming. And shout out to the industry, frankly, for getting way ahead of emissions, anticipating this sort of thing was going to come down, because our divisions don't have the staff to do what they're doing. And it's much better for operators to come out and resolve these much more efficiently and quickly than we can. So that I just want to get that out. I personally have had some experience with these super emitter programs, and they tend to become politicized very quickly with targeted, actions by people who have the right to how they feel, and or frankly, right? My question to you is, the administrative load of processing these the citizen science information that comes in is onerous, frankly. Just before I came here, I was in Idaho, and one person hired someone out of Colorado to fly in, FLIR shoot the only processing facility we have in the state, which is about the size of this room. And it took us a better part of 2 weeks of staff time to resolve that and get everything lined out. That was one individual. Is there any, I know the answer, frankly, but I'll ask it rhetorically. Is there any funding anticipated or process allowed in this rulemaking, in this development with EPA that actually provides the support to try to reach compliance into this? Thank you.
No, I really appreciate that comment, and I have been asked that in some of the public meetings also, because not only this third-party program, but again, additional requirements will add additional work for our inspectors, and how are we being provided any additional funds for the additional work to be done? And currently, no, and currently, yeah, I think in the public comments, and I think we even as an agency, one of our comments to EPA on these rules were, is EPA able to manage all this work? Because they've put a lot of work on themselves, because one thing I didn't really talk about is alternative technologies are also part of these rulemaking. I mean, EPA has presented these as being flexible rules. That's part of how they've been presenting these, and part of that is currently in Quad O, there's a method that is required in the rules for you to use for your leak detection work, your LDAR work. Now you can look at alternative technologies and supply those to EPA, and EPA will approve those. So say these aerial flyovers that you're now doing as operators to be, good operators and find your leaks and hopefully save some of your product, you're doing those voluntarily right now, but hopefully those in the future will count for your regulatory requirement to do quarterly LDAR. But EPA has to review that and approve it. So they have put a lot more work on themselves also, because that's something that's not being delegated to the states. Similar to the super emitter program is currently, we don't really understand how if that's being delegated to states or still run by them. And how are they gonna do that when they're also already understaffed to do all the work that they need to do. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Awesome. Well, I'll let you get to the snacks then, I think. I am right prior to the break.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Appreciate that. As Sheila mentioned, the snacks are out there, so let's take a break till 10:45. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get started pretty quickly here, so everyone out in the hallway could come on in. Appreciate it. Okay, appreciate you coming back in. We're going to get started with our presentation after the break. We're going to hear from Dr. Seth Lyman about Uinta Basin air quality. We've been hearing from Seth so many times, but we always appreciate the work he does out here. And we always like to see where we're headed and what we need to do. So thank you, Seth.
Okay, great. Before I get started, I'll just say that I think the stuff with emissions reduction that industry is doing that was talked about this morning is really exciting. And I don't have anything to present on it today, but we are working on trying to kind of do a better job of tracking how emissions change over time as changes happen in the oil and gas industry, whether it's increased production or decreased emissions, and how those play out and kind of where we're headed. Some of that is using kind of existing data sets. A lot of it is using remote sensing, like was talked about, from satellites and other methods. And we think that work will help kind of show the impact of the changes that are happening and hopefully kind of guide what's working best and where to put investment. So I'll probably talk more about that some other time, but if you're interested in that, let me know, and I'd be glad to get you involved. So I am here on behalf of the Uinta Basin Ozone Working Group, as I talked about, I think it was July when I spoke last. So just if you weren't here then, or as a quick recap, then the Ozone Working Group is a group, this is the list of the people on the steering committee. The purpose of the group is to understand, help kind of inform and collaborate about and deal with and resolve our area's wintertime ozone problems. We have a working group meeting on December 11th. You can come in person to our campus in Vernal or attend on Zoom. There's kind of our tentative agenda, what we're going to talk about there. So if you're interested in that, then I guess I cut off my email address. There's a .edu there, but send me an email is the easiest way if you're interested in joining the Ozone Working Group and aren't a member right now. I guess I put the same thing on there twice, but you can also go to our website, basinozonegroup.usu.edu, to learn more about the Ozone Working Group and what we do and look at information and presentations from past meetings. I don't have a ton to talk about today, but I'll give a quick review of where we're at with Uinta Basin wintertime ozone. I think last time Sheila talked about how we're likely to become a non-attainment area because of improvements. I think I'm going to skip this slide and just show this one that was made by Maurice Texter, who is a consultant for UPA, and just to show that we are on the trend down, and this last winter was no exception. Oh, I did have a slide about it. I think Sheila talked about this last time, but we are on track, or at least proposed to become in attainment of the EPA standard. That doesn't mean ozone isn't a problem anymore, or not something we need to worry about anymore. Winter 2023 showed that we can still make quite a bit of ozone when meteorological conditions are right, but it's getting harder to make because emissions are dropping. This is all of the ozone data from all the sites that operate in the Uinta Basin from last winter, December 2023 through 15th of March 2024. So the y-axis is the 8-hour average ozone, so that's the EPA metric, and then the x-axis there is just the time. So you can see the EPA standard of 70 ppb, and of course we didn't come anywhere close. We didn't have snow that stuck around in the Uinta Basin. It matters whether we have snow kind of at the lower elevations, and that didn't happen this last winter, so we didn't have even close calls. We did have 3 days with high ozone this summer. This is a similar plot, but it shows April through September. And again, all the sites that were operating in the Uinta Basin at the time, those were pretty clearly associated with wildfire smoke events, I think from the Pacific Northwest, if I remember right. And you can see another spike that just scratched against the standard on the 1st of September. So those are, I guess we could say, less of a concern, at least from the regulatory perspective. From the health perspective, of course, ozone is ozone. But from the regulatory perspective, then there's kind of a reprieve if it's from wildfires rather than from local emissions. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we can do to prepare for the winter, to ensure that even if we have snow cover this winter, that ozone is as low as possible. The first thing Rikki set me up for, and that's our ozone alert program. I hate QR codes. I think it's really awkward to try to do that while it's up. And so my advice is Google Uinta Basin ozone alert, and you'll find it. I think that might be easier. Or just, again, email me, seth.lyman@usu.edu. Please sign up for the program. Rikki talked a little bit about what it's for, but we send forecasts when high ozone is expected, so that especially for folks in industry, so that they can reduce emissions at those times when it matters most. Outside of wildfire events like I just showed you, then we really only have impaired air quality in the Uinta Basin when we have those winter inversions with snow on the ground, and sometimes that can be a few days every year and no more than that. And so concentrating on those periods, maybe I said that wrong. Sometimes it is more than that, but many winters we just have a few days a year that we can kind of concentrate and focus on and make that effort at the time when it really matters. So again, if you send me an email, seth.lyman@usu.edu, or just Google us, you'll find us quicker than the QR code, I think. So Rikki already showed the Latch the Hatch list of what we can do to prepare for the winter. If it's okay, I'll kind of read quickly through these. These are things that the UPA's air committee, so industry folks, came up with. And you can find them on our webpage when you Google the Ozone Alert Program. But these are things that the local industry recommends we do when we have winter inversions that could lead to high ozone. And I'll say too that even if you're not in industry, whoever wants to can sign up for the Ozone Alert Program. We have folks on our list from all walks of life. But the purpose is the reason we do the program and started the program was to help reduce emissions during this time when it matters most. And okay, so before a winter ozone alert, then so now I guess as winter approaches or is almost here, then maintaining thief hatches, reviewing a company's ozone action plan, things like that are probably things that can be done. And then I think the second bullet there is similar to that, and the third bullet there is similar to that. During the whole winter, it's a good idea to be extra careful because we don't always have, we try our best to do the forecasting well. My coworker John Lawson is a meteorologist and is working on making our forecasts better and more quantitative and with more information about certainty levels. But sometimes we have less notice, I guess, from the weather system than other times about when we'll have high ozone. So being extra careful through the whole winter is a good idea. Now I'm on the fourth one down, so make sure that flares and combustor pilots are lit. And then the fifth one down, if possible, minimize, once we are in an ozone event, then if it's possible to delay liquid hauling, that can be useful because there's emissions there. If a high ozone event is expected, then where possible, OGI or AVO inspections and leak repairs can be useful. We can perhaps postpone or avoid maintenance during those periods. That might be more difficult in some years like 2023 when we have week after week of high ozone, but most years it's, like I say, a lot shorter time than that. Vehicle idling and vehicle emissions can play a role. NOx emissions, so NOx is oxides of nitrogen that they really come out of any combustion. NOx is low in the Uinta Basin, and there aren't, so like stationary engines and things like that are fairly low NOx sources, and so a lot of the NOx comes from vehicles, so reducing vehicle miles traveled can make a difference. Delaying filling tanks, avoiding using things with high VOC emissions like paints and chemicals, reducing production. The list goes from easy to hard. So if some of these seem like, well, how are we going to do that? I guess that's the point of it gets more difficult as you go. Maybe not all these things are things that can be done all the time, but reducing production is something that could be done. Postponing flowback or completion activities may be possible. Avoiding gas releases from compressor startups and shutdowns. Reducing glycol operation and capturing emissions from equipment where possible. So that's the list. There's other. It's not exhaustive. There's other things that can be done, but just kind of as a reminder. So the only other thing that I wanted to mention is our group at USU's Bingham Research Center that works on this air quality issue. We're kind of, we have for many years received input from a group of stakeholders to make sure that the work that we do, the research that we do, has the most impact and the most relevance for whether it's industry or regulators or elected officials, city, county governments, things like that. To make sure that what we do is useful to those parties and isn't just research that we're doing for its own sake. We're trying to revamp that effort to make it so that we're getting input really from the initial planning stage of our research projects. And so we are looking for anybody interested in being part of kind of helping us plan out and guide what we do to make sure that it's useful for you. So we're looking for folks who are able to commit kind of longer term, so over a few years maybe. I don't think it will take a ton of time, maybe 1 to 2 hours per quarter. It's better for us, I think, if you can at least sometimes attend local meetings in the Uinta Basin, because if you're like me, then Zoom sucks your soul, and it's just nicer to have meetings in person and we can get more done. But also, we understand that stakeholders in the Uinta Basin are all around the country, not even just in the Wasatch Front area. And so that's not, like, we can work with that, but we do like in-person meetings better because we think they're more effective. You don't have to have particular technical expertise, although that's great if you do. My last one, small stipends may be available for those who participate separate from employment. We are interested in community perspectives also, and we recognize that sometimes people in the community may have interest, expertise, whatever, but don't have a role in their job that allows them to do something like that, and we have a little bit of funding that could probably help with that. That's all I got today. Again, yeah, I even put my cell number, so if Googling's too hard and emailing's too hard, send me a text. If you want to, and especially if you want to sign up for the Ozone Alert, get in touch with me, or if you want to be part of our stakeholder group. Thanks a lot.
Questions?
Yeah, any questions if you have any. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Right now, we're going to have a elected official update, and that's kind of a random area. So first, we're going to hear from Jeff Chugg, a new commissioner in Duchesne County, followed by Willis Lefevre from Uinta County. Jeff, where are you at? Okay, before you come up, I just want to say something. Jeff is replacing Irene Hansen. And I just wanted to say something. I've been coming out here for 15 years now, and Irene has been such a joy to work with when she was the economic development, and then she moved to commissioner, and she is really part of the success of this meeting and getting it where it has been, starting very small. And I just want to express my gratitude to her from the division and for myself of getting this meeting where it's going. So thank you, Irene. You will be missed. And Jeff, you have some big shoes to fill there. So I'll turn the time over to you.
So I can qualify that statement really quick. Everybody I talk to, I say, I'm taking Irene's place, but I am not going to be able to fill her shoes. So that's already well established. So it's a pleasure to be here. I actually have been coming to this meeting for years. I work in the energy sector now, but it's always very informative. And now I have to pay more attention than I used to, but no, I'm kidding. You'll see on the screens that I did bring one slide with my contact information, so you could all have that. For those of you who have had a prior number for me, this one is different, so you may want to change it. Currently, I have both phone numbers in this phone, but at some point in time, we'll transition to just the one. Just to give you a little background on me, for those of you who don't know me, I kind of started off my working life in the retail business management area, and then made the natural transition from that to law enforcement. Irene says I have great stories, so if you ever want to hear the one where I got bit by a Utah Highway Patrol police dog on live TV, I'll tell you that one. It's pretty good. And then I retired from the Highway Patrol, and I've worked in the energy transportation area for the last 10 and a half years. So I love the industry, mostly familiar with it through all my interaction. I've lived all my Highway Patrol time, except for 5 years, was here in the basin as well. Sort of grew up in this area. Those of you who knew State Senator Van Tassel, he's my uncle. My mother grew up in Tabiona, so my roots in the basin run very, very deep. And I'm very proud of them and why my wife and I have chosen to stay here as well, post-retirement from law enforcement and continue to work. So if I can be of help, I look forward to that. I look forward to serving with and for you. And I thank you very much for those of you who support me as well. Thanks.
As he mentioned, Willis Lefevre, Uinta County Commissioner-elect. Thank you. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. This group is my home. I spent 35 years in the oil and gas industry with a company called Halliburton. Maybe you've heard of them before. 15 years in the field and 20 years in management. So I know it from the inside and the outside and all the way around. So I'm sure a lot of you I may know and have met before. I haven't worked in that industry for about 10 years. When they closed the facility in Vernal, I helped shut that down and chose not to go back to work. So after 10 years, I got to figure what it's like to get up and get going. I've been in the agriculture industry for about 55 years. I started working outside the home with my aunt when I was 10 years old, and I've never quit. I currently raise bulls as a living, along with agriculture livestock equipment that I sell as well. So I'm excited to get going. I've been attending everything I can, and learning for the past couple years, 2.5 years probably. And so I think I'm about as prepared as you can get without the calling, so to speak. And I'm excited to get to y'all and get to know y'all better and work with you. It's exciting for me, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we're in good hands and appreciate it and look forward to working with you. Now, Bart told me that we have 3 legislators here, Representative Watkins, Senator Winterton, and Representative Lunn. And they've been tag teaming of who's going to talk, so I'll let them wrestle that out. So Representative Watkins, they're pointing to you. Are you up? Okay. Do you have any slides or anything? Or?
No.
Okay.
Nope. Go ahead. You're the senator.
Yeah, short straw. To start off with, I want to thank our state employees. Thank you guys for what you do. And, you know, and my role is in the Senate, I'm the chair of the Natural Resource Committee. So a lot of this runs through, all the bills run through my committee. Then I sit on the appropriations so that we make sure that we have the revenue so that our employees can help you do your jobs. And this year we've been working on a lot of energy-related bills. Representative Watkins and I sit with about 11 other legislators that are doing deep dives. Most of our study has been on the electric grid and us not having enough power to maintain the quality of life that we all like. And as the state continues to grow, we're finding out that our utility suppliers can't supply our needs. I had a meeting last month with Weber County elected officials, and they have 1,700 homes that they can't move forward with because Rocky Mountain Power cannot supply the electricity for them. And so this study group that we've been involved in is where, you know, nuclear is the big buzzword, and everybody's kind of scared of that, but I've been on the path for 2 years now on that, and we're still 20 years down the road to have actually a nuclear plant that would be permitted and start construction. So that is not a fix for today or tomorrow. We have to look at what we have now. We did run legislation last year that stopped them from decommissioning our coal-fired power plants, which for Representative Watkins is good that her coal miners will still be able to go to work. And so in the meantime, we have geothermal that Mick and a bunch of his guys are following up on, that's in the center of the state, that's real promising. And again, we won't see generation from that until probably 26. So what are our options? And that comes to the topic of our natural gas here. A couple of years ago, we were talking about the constraints of getting gas out of the basin. Rikki brought me an individual company just Monday or Tuesday, and they gave me an update on what they're doing and how they've helped fix that problem, and a couple of new projects that are in the pipeline to be permitted or going into permitting next year, which will help us even more so that, again, we can continue with an aggressive drilling program here. So as we go along, I just want you to know that if you can't get the satisfaction with our employees, with our divisions, we would like to know about it so that we can step and see where there's the disconnect, because we want to make sure that we're energy independent here in the state of Utah, and that it's also affordable and dispatchable, and that we all have the comforts of life that we like and can get in and drive our vehicles, our fossil fuel vehicles, as California is now finding out that they're going to have to roll back their aggressive plans because they can't get the power to even plug in those cars. So now they've got to rethink their whole energy plan. So as a state of Utah, we're doing well. We've been very, very busy this summer trying to not only our interim committees, but our work groups, and trying to make sure that we have the adequacy, both appropriations and legislatively, to be able to make these things continue to go. So if you have some questions or something like that, get a hold of us, because we're available. We'll be starting session in January. We just finalized our interim committees yesterday. Roughly, I was thinking we have about 110 committee bills. Those are all been vetted. So those are the ones that we probably won't have hearings on as they come into the first session, or the first week of the session. But then in the Senate, we have about 150 open bills that I was counting, and over 300 in the House. So it looks like it's wrapping up to be a very busy session. And if you follow the legislation, what goes on, there's an easy way to follow things that are topics that you're interested in. But we do like the feedback so that we know that we're representing it in the right way. Christine?
Okay. Thank you. We have been busy, and my favorite thing that I heard about this week was that Senator Mike Lee is now the Senate's Energy and Natural Resource Committee chair. And just to quote him, he said he wants to unleash American energy. So that kind of made my week. So we all work in kind of different areas. And one of the things I've been working on is I've been working with President Aaron Waite to get more resources to our technical colleges and to our high schools. We all know that we need workers, and we need them to be trained, and so that they can go out and then you continue on with that. So trying to get more funding for these schools. We have a new high school in Emery County, and I went to this is where my kids graduated, and I attended the open house, and I felt like I was at a technical school. It's amazing what they've done with this school. And they're paying some of their teachers extra classes because their classes are so full in welding and some of these technical things. So we're out there getting our things done. We're very focused in the House in what we call all of the above in energy, as he talked about nuclear, gas, oil, electricity. We know we've got issues that we are definitely working on. I am the chair of, or have been, we'll find out within the next week what our committee assignments are, but I've been the chair in appropriations of BEETLE, which is Business Economic Development and Labor. And so that's been a real big focus of mine, is to keep businesses coming into our rural areas in manufacturing, et cetera, and what do we need, the infrastructure, et cetera. So that's been a big focus of mine. Also, my chair of the Child Welfare Oversight Committee, so I've been dealing with some of the really tragic, sad things that had happen here in Utah with our children, trying to stop that, and we've got a bunch of groups working on that. So, yeah, we're busy, and feel free to call. I have a lot of people call. We love to hear from you during the session to make sure that we're staying focused the way that we should be. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm kind of the odd man out. I'm not from the basin, but all my life I wanted to either be a sheep herder or a cowboy. So just a quick story on that. So growing up, I grew up in Manti, and I've got some relatives that have a pretty large sheep operation. So when spring hit and lambs started hitting the ground and it was time to dock lambs, I was sloughing school and down on their porch at 5 in the morning just so I could go with them. And that was almost every week that I wanted to. I didn't care about school. I was more interested in herding sheep and docking lambs. And I've never gotten rid of that behavior. Only now I want to be an oil and gas guy. And so as often as I can, I sneak out of the house in Manti and come to the basin. I just want to hang out here because this is a great place to be. And I really appreciate being here. I'm a petroleum engineer by education and have about 35 years in the oil and gas world. This is my last term in the House, and so I'm going to have to find a real job, but I think that's coming. One of the things that I've been working on is looking forward to see what we can do as far as generation of power using natural gas, whether that's self-generation, which means on-site you can generate your own power, or whether that means working with one of the co-ops or with one of the other power companies to figure out how to generate more power. If you look forward into the world of artificial intelligence, we're right on the threshold of that. Prior to the step before artificial intelligence is just your typical data center, where a lot of your information from the cloud goes, and probably the most commonly known company is Facebook, that has their own data centers and do those type of things. And they are power intensive. They are incredibly power intensive. And so they require a lot of some source of a resource, or some sort of a resource of power generation. And the renewables aren't getting it done. Hence, they've decided to go to natural gas. Now, in addition to that, the next step is artificial intelligence. And to give you just an idea of what artificial intelligence, the kind of power it requires, an AI data cluster can burn 200 megawatt hours worth of power. So it's huge. What does that translate into for natural gas? About 50 million a day. And as I was an engineer down in the San Juan Basin, at that time in the 90s, we were moving about a BCF, maybe 2 BCF a day out of the San Juan Basin. And these companies are coming to Utah. They like Utah. They really do. Some of the things that they require initially, and they're starting to figure out that that's not always possible, is they want to be in an area that's close to an international airport. They want to be in a place where they can fly in, fly out, and be done. And then they want to be able to house people there too, house some of their own people in these facilities. But you can imagine if one 200 megawatt data center or AI cluster requires 50 million cubic feet of gas a day, that's just one. And there's multiples of these that want to come in. Some of them need a gig. So that's 250 million a day. And you get 4 or 5 of them that need a gig of power, you're up to a TCF a day before you can blink. And it's almost an arms race right now for these companies. I'm thrilled to death to hear that there are some pipeline companies that are trying to figure out ways to get more natural gas out of the basin to reduce the constraints and get rid of the bottlenecks. But this is what's coming, and it's a two-edged sword. We ought to be thrilled to death because there's going to be an awful lot of activity in areas where natural gas can be produced. But nevertheless, there's also going to be a lot of growing pains with it. But it's coming, and we have to figure that out. So one of the things that I've been tasked to do is figure out what that means. Some of the we're going to have to redo some of the legislation to accommodate the scope of this. But most people, I'm kind of speaking to the choir here because most people here understand what it means to move a million a day. $1 million a day translates into about $2,500 a day. And that's not bad. That's not bad if the price of gas is $2.50. But that's just $1 million a day. When you get to a BCF a day, then that translation moves up substantially in one day. And so the scope of this is huge. And it's hard for people to imagine what that is. Does anybody know how big the Deseret Power Plant is? What's their production? Reed?
Lake capacity, I think, is 492 megawatts.
So 492 megawatts. That will handle 2 AI data clusters. That's it. And so the power coming on, there's only one place they're going to get it, and that's natural gas. as Senator Winterton said, nuclear's 20, maybe 30 years away. So we're going to have to probably buckle our seatbelts and hang on, because it's going to be a very interesting ride. One of the things that as an industry we might want to consider, and I'm just throwing this out, there's the White River. The White River hub is the closest one to us, I do believe. I think Opal's even further away from us than the White River. But we probably need to start thinking about, is there a need for another hub? Is there a reason to have another hub, and look at index pricing and those type of things? But that's just moving forward. Thanks.
Well, we appreciate our legislatures and their support they give us out here, and they've always helped the industry grow. Right now, we're going to hear from Duchesne County on the administrative conditional use update from Commissioner Hanson and Commissioner Killian, right? Do you have any slides or anything? Or? No. Okay.
Yes. First of all, as you can see, Commissioner Miles is not here. And so it's a good time to tell a joke. No. You know, we're remodeling the South Building downtown here in Duchesne. It's the old county administration building, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to house the senior center. It's going to house extension. It's going to house our economic development office. And the library, and all of them got extra space, and it's going to be amazing. Well, Commissioner Miles and I had a little difference of opinion on storage. You know, I wanted a Connex for everybody. And he said, no, it's just not nice. It just doesn't look right next to that beautiful new building. So I teased a few times and said, well, let's arm wrestle it. And he never took me on it. And then I realized he would have just let me win. So that wasn't fair. So anyway, we compromised, but he wanted to be here today, and it's okay for me to brag about what an outstanding Commissioner Miles is. He wouldn't let me do this if he was here, so I'm doing it because he isn't here. But he's a fantastic commissioner, and I'm so looking and can say the same thing about Commissioner Killian. What a pleasure and a privilege it is to work with him. And I'm, you know, it's funny as an elected official, and there's people in here who are or have been or maybe ascertained to be in the future. And I think a privilege that may not be granted to many is choosing when to step down for the right reasons, you hope, at the right time, having accomplished what you hope to accomplish, and then knowing that that's true because of the person that stepped up to take your place. What an amazing feeling that is, to have that privilege of knowing who is stepping in is, well, I mean, I realize people are equal, but is better, is smarter, and has the skills that are needed for right now what we're going through. But this is an exciting time in Utah. It's an exciting time in America. There's a feeling of optimism, a feeling of joy, a feeling of we're looking at a new day, and what an exciting time to be involved. This will be my last official meeting. I do hope to come occasionally because everyone here is my friends, and good friends at that. I've had a relationship with almost everyone in the room. And, you know, as we talk about DAQM, I wasn't going to let John get away with saying nice things about me without me returning the favor. The Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining is just an outstanding leader in the state of Utah. And I appreciate the legislators that are here today who give them the ability to do their job, the resources to do their job, and the backing to do their job. And boy, are they good at what they do. And I just, what a pleasure and a privilege it is to work with them and look to them for solutions. Which brings us to our next point, and I think the reason that we were on the agenda was to talk about the conditional use permit. And you know, it's funny as you start into processes and of course relationships are built over a 20-year period, and then 3.5 years of meetings and talking about things, and then of course diligently working on something this year. I think the fact that everybody isn't quite satisfied that it's perfect might be that it is perfect. We know that it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we also know that the companies are meeting and exceeding, you know, everything set in front of them and every goal. And they're held already to the highest standards. We're looking, they've been very involved in the community. We're looking for them to be, have that same kind of involvement in the neighborhoods where they're doing business. And so we know that that will be met. We did pass that on Monday. Mike Godfredson, although we won't go over it today, and he does have copies of that ordinance here with him in case anybody. Mike, would you raise your hand? Thank you, Mike. We will have the application that we have tweaked and gotten perfectly. It will be online. It's going to be, I think, much easier than what anyone might envision that it's going to be. Very systematic, very predictable, and something that probably will be second nature to folks. It will give us the opportunity to have some great conversations before, during. It will be administrative, so it won't, not that there's anything wrong with go to planning and zoning, but it won't need to. But the neighbors will be contacted to where they have the opportunity to weigh in by mail and by phone call if they want to have a conversation, and we're just looking forward to great things to come. And by the way, on December 2nd, which is a Monday, we're going to do a working meeting as part of our commission meeting at 1:15. We'll notify all of the companies and stakeholders. We're to just talk about the kind of the fee part of it. I know from the road fee, I think we're right at exactly what the industry came up with. Again, I'm not speaking as a commission on that. That's my sense that we're right exactly where they recommended that we be. And so we'll be starting to work on that part of it. And but we're looking forward to the dialogue, looking very much forward to having Jeff work with us through the month of December, and then be taking over. I think you're sworn in on January 6th.
What an ominous date.
I don't know how often it is. My husband asked me, you know, are you planning on being there? I said, you bet I'm planning on being there. What an amazing opportunity to, again, watch the right person step up, and it's my privilege to work with him. But talking about privileges, I'm here with one of my best friends that I wouldn't have known if somebody, and I think it was supernatural, but we've had stopped in the middle of the road and decided to turn around and put his name in for commission. And it has been just a privilege, the knowledge of agriculture, oil and gas, you know, everything has just been amazing to work, and water. You want a conversation, bring up water and have Commissioner Killian with you. Take the back roads with Commissioner Killian. He knows where everybody lives and what their kids' names are. Why? Because he's a 5th generation Duchesne County resident, Basin resident, and he loves this area, and he's here for all the right reasons. With that, Commissioner Killian, what do you want to add?
Well, I'd like to, she always gets me and then I have to follow her, so anyway, thank you all for coming here today. On the 17th of December, we're going to have an open house for this south building down here. But we're also going to have a retirement party for Commissioner Hanson. She doesn't know that yet, but she just found out. So I would like to invite all of you that possibly can, if you could, to come there. The ceremony for the building's at 11, and then we'll have her retirement party right after that. Inside the building, you can tour the building, see what she just This was her idea, that building down there. When I come on as a commissioner and I walked through it the first time with them, I thought, you guys are crazy. And that, but it's cost quite a lot of money. But for Duchesne, for the seniors, for the library that's there, for extension, for the economic development, it's a beautiful building. And that it's, and, but come, I've got So I Love Irene. I'll tell you, this county's going to miss her. The state of Utah's going to miss her. And that if we have any problems that we really need, we just have her call the governor. You know, I mean, she has an inside track over a lot of years and that. And I know that on this conditional use permit that we passed, I wasn't 100% in favor of it. But then when they moved into the neighborhoods and everything like some of these wells have, and then all the phone calls you get. I mean, I can't go to church right now because all the neighbors, right now they're impacting where I live really intensely. And all I hear is complaining and that. And it isn't, and I defend 100%, but they ask, why do you allow that? Why do you allow them? And that, I mean, I have one neighbor there that's probably twice daily sending me texts of stop them, stop them, stop them, and that. And there's no stopping them. It's their rights to do what industry's there for and that. But I don't know what the answers is. So we passed the conditional use permit, so they'll be notified. So if they want to sell their house, like he said he would have done if he'd known what was coming and that, basically that's why I was in favor, finally become in favor of it, was just on that account. Neighbors will be notified, people can decide of, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I've thought all the stuff he's talking about, I live exactly the same and it's not bothering me in the least. And that I'm not going to get no royalties off it, none of that or anything in that, but it doesn't bother me in the least. It's making a lot of jobs. It's a real benefit to our county. The industry is everything. And that I'm pro industry. I'm pro I have family that works in the industry. They've had jobs. They haven't had to leave and everything. So I'm pro-industry and that. And come on the 2nd, express what the fees are. And I really enjoyed the last several months of hearing everything that's been said as we've worked on this and everything and that. And the Dogum people, I mean, all of them, Bart, just all of them, and that. Thank you guys for what they do and everything and that, and thank you, all of you. So,
a quick shout out to our staff that I know probably aren't in here. Deb might be, that helped with the breakfast this morning. I don't know how much, but I'll tell you what, this is a source of pride for them to have you come here. They work sometimes half the night to set everything up. They send us pictures to make sure it's perfect. They bought this backdrop specifically for this meeting. They consider it an honor to have you here today. And so if you pass them in the hall, please shake their hand and thank them for the good work they do, because they consider it a privilege. With that, I'm going to turn, I know he's already talked, but let's make him talk again. There you go, Jeff.
I don't think I have anything else to add, but I appreciate the work that our commissioners are doing. You don't always get to see, their true feelings on things in meetings. Those sometimes get hidden under facades a little bit, but they do love this industry. I know that they care, and I think their best interest is in preserving the industry and preserving the rights of the citizens as well.
Thank you very much.
Now we'll move on, and we're going to hear about oil, gas, and mining rulemaking from Natasha Baldoff with the division. We have a lot of rulemaking going on, and she keeps us straight and organized, and we appreciate it. So now she's going to let you know where we're at. So thank you, Natasha.
Hi, I'm Natasha Baldoff. I'm the Legislative and Policy, Planning Coordinator for the division, and I will be giving a rulemaking update today. I wanted to start off saying that we have revamped our process, our rulemaking process. We're trying to be more transparent, so we've implemented a spreadsheet comment tracker, and this will include division responses, and this is something that we're hoping to have on our website eventually. Just so that everything is clear and transparent, anyone can look it up, find any drafts or comments. And I do want to say thank you to our stakeholders who have dealt with us starting this new process in the middle of a handful of processes that we have. So I'm going to get into our specific rules that are ongoing. So we have our recycle facilities, and this came about from House Bill 310 from the 2019 legislative session, and it changed the definition of solid waste, which moved it from, it moved the current EMP Waste Regulatory Authority from the division to the Division of Waste Management and Radiation Control. The division worked closely with WMRIC to establish clear boundaries and a timeline for the regulatory move. Some of the changes include disposal ponds will now be permitted and administered under WMRIC, while recycle ponds will remain under the division. This rule, we've also incorporated the changes from 2024's produced water bill. WMRIC, I don't have the date, and I'm sure you'll get it in the next presentation, but they recently finalized their rules, and the division is on the docket for the December board meeting. And that's where we're going to present the rules and ask to begin the formal rulemaking process. If it is approved, we're anticipating a public comment period around the start of the new year, with the rules being adopted at the February board hearing. The next one that I'm going to cover is carbon sequestration. And in the 2022 general legislative session, House Bill 244 was passed, and this created the framework for the division to begin obtaining primacy from the EPA. And the primacy will give the division regulatory oversight over permitting, construction, operation, compliance, and the closure of Class 6 wells. The division has begun rulemaking on this, and we did submit a draft rule to the EPA. We did recently receive comments back from the EPA, and we've been working on incorporating their suggestions. And we're hoping to present these rules to the board around the beginning of 2025. In the meantime, we will be solidifying program descriptions, MOUs, and other required documents. The other rulemakings we have going on include our bonding rules, specifically for our oil and gas program. So we began updating these rules back in 2020, and we invited stakeholders into the process towards the end of 2022. Since then, we've held productive meetings and received valuable feedback, and our last stakeholder engagement meeting was back in August. Since then, the division has been evaluating the feedback that we received. We're anticipating another stakeholder meeting before we go to the board, but we are anticipating doing that early 2025. The next one, board printing. This came about by looking at different processes, how we could streamline them, hoping to save time and money, even though that wasn't necessarily the intention. We've been trying to evaluate the best way to communicate with property owners and operators, and a lot of that we found was through printing and mailing from our board. Our board actually asked us to, or asked the division to present recommendations on the best ways to go about changing and updating these mailing and printing procedures that we have. Those recommendations will be heard during the December 4th briefing session. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on pollution control. This is one that we finalized and it became effective on August 28th. I did want to mention that from House Bill 373 from the 2024 general legislative session, the division was added to a list of agencies that can produce this tax certificate for pollution control facilities. I know that was touched on earlier, and you can now go to the division and we can start processing that. But that's all I have for today. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to do my best to answer. If not, I know I have really great teammates in the audience who I'm more than happy to defer.
Natasha, this is Bart. Just on the pollution control facility, just to let operators in the room know, the team worked pretty hard on that and got a pollution control facility application online just this last week, so it's out there.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Oh, there is a question. Okay.
I'm Robin Hanson. I'm one of the engineers in the BLM state office. I just have a simple question. We get the mailings for the board hearings sent manually. Could you please send them electronically?
That is something that we're
That's
looking into.
It's a big mess that we have to deal with. We have to scan them anyway, so can they be sent electronically?
That's good to know that you have to scan it. That is something that we know that there's a lot of paper leaving our office. I think Mick might make a comment towards that, but we're looking at electronic ways to send that out. Did you have something more to say on that?
Do. You know, I've got things to say.
Come on up.
I'm not on the agenda, everybody, but thanks, Natasha, real quick. Starting with board notices. If we keep mailing and printing paper the way we are, we're going to blow through our budget real quick, and I got a couple of staff members about to lose their mind, given the administrative workload of just standing by a copier and just literally pounds of paper that go into everybody's mailbox and then just get. So yeah, we're actually going to move to a QR code system. Who was that guy? That I thought was one of the most efficient ways out there. It's actually on the not on the back of my phone. That's how I share my ID. Again, Mick Thomas, just briefly, that's one of the things. The rulemaking, what Natasha was talking about, we did change midstream. I'm the new director. I came on and I thought we need a higher level of transparency. Here's the deal. When you're changing rules that people have to operate by, you want to be as transparent and have as much communication as possible and a set process so that everybody knows what's coming as you're going along. The best way to do that is to have meetings where we all get together, talk about it, then we document it, everybody knows what's going on. So when those decisions are made, whether they come, like the county or the state board, or I don't know at the federal level it isn't too productive, but at least up to the state level, it's very productive and there's no surprises. And we come out with some really good law and rules and ordinances that are robustly vetted and thereby almost unchallengeable in litigation. So you put the work in the front end, so you save money and time on the back end. That was my fault or my idea, whatever you want to, however it works out. I wish Representative Lund was still here because as a geologist, we had some chiding back and forth about the brilliance of engineers or if they're even useful, and man, he sure is. Those numbers he gave out was something else. Some of you know Governor Cox and the Office of Energy Development is moving forward with something called Operation Gigawatt. And the goal is to double the energy production in the state over the next 10 years. We're currently roughly 5 gigawatts. You're adding 5 gigawatt to that. That's what was the math he shared? 5 BCF is about what that would be if it was just natural gas, right? That's incredibly lucrative for the field. The missing cog is now we need 5 gigawatts of power generation capacity to then pump into a grid that may still need to be revisited and furbished. That's $10 to $15 billion that rough napkin math or Android math the state's going to have to come up with. Not the state, but Rocky Mountain and the co-ops, right? And the governor's office and the Office of Energy Development is aware of that. As Senator Winterton said, we've got some amazing geothermal resources in the state that I think optimally may be a gigawatt of power, maybe. Coal is still one of the highest BTU contents on the planet, right? You walked in, I just had to call that out, right? Natural gas, we've just got, I don't know, 400 or 500 years worth of it, some crazy amount. It just makes sense in the short term. If you're trying to double a power capacity in 10 years, I'm not knocking the idea, but with a nuclear plant potentially 20 years out, well, you got to have something to come in the middle of that, right? And I want to let y'all know we're aware of that. And when the Governor Cox, I'm not putting any words in his mouth, but when he said all of the above, we meant it. It's not just nuclear and geothermal and solar and wind, but also the traditional hydrocarbon sources we have. So I actually don't normally crash speaking engagements, but there was so much that came up today that I want to throw out and had my name mentioned a few times, so I want to come up and take jabs. If there are any questions, I'm going to put it back to Natasha, and she can make stuff up or answer the questions as she rolls along. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank Natasha. I worked on several rulemaking procedures, and it's not simply sitting down and writing rules. It's an amazing process, and it's kind of like herding cats. And just doing one is overwhelming. We got how many up there? 5, 6, and they just keep growing. She does a great job. So appreciate her, what she does for us. Our final presentation will be from the Division of Waste Management, update on solid waste rules and temporary permits by Brian Spear. So here we go. You have slides? Just a green button there.
Green button there? Okay. Hello, I'm Brian Spear. I'm the manager of the solid waste section at the Division of Waste Management and Radiation Control. And just have a couple of slides here to help with the discussion of the update today on the solid waste rules. First of all, we created 2 rules during our rulemaking process that has occurred over the course of about 3 years, where we've coordinated with the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining on our rulemaking processes and moving forward with the regulatory transition for waste facilities. So we've got Rule R315.321, which is our rule for landfill facilities that will manage E&P waste. And so all existing land farms will be converted to landfills. And then we've got R315.322. And this rule is actually really important not only for the oil and gas industry, but for other industries in Utah. Other industries in Utah that have liquid wastes. So that was vital not only for the oil and gas industry. So we're just grateful to have both of these rules out. They were published on October 15th, 2024, so just a little over a month ago. And what I'd like to talk about today is a temporary permit program. As we were working on our rulemaking processes and thinking about how DAQ's rule changes that they're making and ours, the existing DAQ rules that establish the standards for the land farming and evaporation pond standards, those rules will probably go away before operators are able to put together a full permit package for a permit under WMRIC. So we created a temporary permit program, and I'd like to talk through some of the things that operators should be thinking about when these temporary permits are issued. So first of all, we expect in early December, so in the next couple of weeks, we'll put the temporary permits out for public comment, so that this is a process that we engage in with each of our permits. Just allows the public to have an opportunity to look at permits. What do they say? What are the requirements? Do I have any comments? That sort of thing. In late January, pending any public comments and addressing those, we anticipate that late January the temporary permits will be issued. One of the questions that has come up a lot as we work through the process with stakeholders is about financial assurance and any differences with WMRIC versus DAQM. And currently, about half of the waste operators do have certificates of deposit as their primary financial instrument for financial assurance. We're going to allow those CDs, we're going to allow those during the temporary permit period. Temporary permits will last for 1 year. And so during that 1 year period and those CDs, each operator will need to look at what financial instrument will work with WMRIC according to our processes. Now, we have a lot of different financial instruments that work for financial assurance at WMRIC. Letters of credit, insurance, sureties, corporate financial tests. So we have a number of different types of ways to secure the financial instrument for financial assurance. And I put a couple of timelines here in my slides. So one of the things that will need to happen when the temporary permits are issued is that the financial assurance will need to be transferred from DAQM to WMRIC within the first 60 days after the temporary permit is issued. And then I already mentioned the temporary permit will be good for 12 months. Here's a few other things that need to happen during the temporary permit period. We're going to ask folks to send us a land farm transition plan within the first 90 days after their permit becomes effective. Now, as far as timeline, what I mean by the first 90 days. So we've got this roughly 2-month period where before we get temporary permits issued, right? So we've already got 2 months built in. And then there's a 60-day period to get the financial assurance transferred to us. So potentially 4 months from now, then the 90 days starts. So really 6-7 months at least. And at that point, that's the timeline. We ask people to send us a transition plan. And the purpose of the transition plan for land farms is to essentially tell us if you want to make any changes to the configuration of the waste management site. So just for example, if you have, say, a 20-acre land farm and you'd like to reduce the footprint of that land farm down to, 5 to 10 acres, we just want a plan on how you want to proceed with that so that we can just have that in our minds as you're submitting additional documents to us and as you're preparing your permit. We can have that plan in our hands, and we know what you're planning on doing. There is a benefit to consolidating and making the footprint smaller of a land farm, and that benefit is that less financial assurance is needed for a smaller footprint. Surface impoundments. So this is the term we're using for our evaporation ponds. And this is a kind of a standard term that's used in a number of other industries for ponds, for waste ponds. So we've used that surface impoundment phrase or wording, and we're asking that in the first 90 days of your permit, again, that's going to be 6-7 months from now, that you have a closure and post-closure plan put together if you plan to close any surface impoundments in the near term on your evaporation ponds. So here's a few other things to keep in mind during the temporary permit. There are record keeping and reporting requirements. We ask that you keep a daily operating record, and inside of the temporary permit, we list the items that need to go in that daily operating record. But that'll include things like if inspections are done on the facility, if there's maintenance done on equipment that affects your permitting requirements, if there's deviations from any rules or plans of operation that you may have, we ask that you record that in your daily operating record. We also ask for record keeping on daily tons or cubic yards of waste received, the number of vehicles that come to dispose of waste, and the waste types that are disposed by those vehicles. volumes of waste received do need to be recorded, and they do need to be converted into tons. And we did write in the new rule set a specific conversion factor for produced water. So we've got 53 barrels of produced water will equal 1 ton of disposal. So we'd like you to use that conversion for produced water. We also have quarterly and annual reports that we ask tonnage reported on those reports. There's also fees associated with the waste that is received at a solid waste disposal facility. And that's currently at 21 cents a ton, may change to 22 cents a ton in the future. And then also on those annual reports, any financial assurance updates need to be submitted as well. And then finally on this slide, just the full permit application. We'd like to see people submitting their full permit application within the first 6 months after their permit becomes effective. And again, when I say 6 months, that's plus the extra about 4 months it takes for that permit to become effective, right? So about 10 months from now, roughly, we want people to submit their full permit application. And if for the operators that are meet that 180-day deadline to submit their complete application, then if we put in a clause that says, hey, if we take any longer than the date on your temporary permit, then you can keep on operating under that temporary permit. Okay, so we're not going to penalize you if we take longer to approve it, as long as that application is complete and has all the information and meets the requirements. So that is the update here as far as the temporary permit. Gives you an outline of some of the timelines and some of the standards that will need to be met during the temporary permit period. I've put up here on both corners of this platform paper copies of what the temporary permit will look like. Okay, so this is a typical temporary permit. Your specific facility might have slight wording different here or there, depending on circumstances and equipment and operations that you have going on at your site. But this is a typical permit, and as you read through it, what you'll find is that we wrote in the conditions of the permit, basically it helps you become compliant with the WMRIC rules that you'll continue to follow with your full permit. So as you follow those conditions, you should find yourself in compliance with the rules. So anyway, copies up here for anybody who wants that. And lastly, oops, I pushed the wrong button. There we go. Lastly, just some contact information. We do have both Brian Watt and Nathan Nicolodemus. Could I have both of you stand up? Nathan is brand new to our team, but both of these gentlemen are here with me today, and these are the guys that will be reviewing and helping with the approval of these permits. Thank you. Is there any questions for me? Troy?
Are these conditions going to be emailed out to each operator?
Yeah, like the timelines and whatnot. Yeah, hadn't really thought about it thoroughly, but I think that's a good way to go forth. And we'll send out a copy of this typical permit so that, yep, you bet. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've closed out our presentations, but we'd like to open up a period of time at the end for collaboration for any public or state agencies or federal agencies that would like to bring something out that we need to know in this group. So we'd open it now we got microphones out there. Jerry, did you still want to?
Thanks. So I think most of you know who I am. If not, I'm Jerry Kinska. I'm wearing several hats right now. I'm officially the AFM Overlands and Minerals here out of the BLM Vernal Field Office. But just for a couple updates, if you aren't aware, our state director left a month or so ago, Greg Sheehan. So we have a acting in his place, Matt Preston, till that position's filled. For the Vernal field office is part of the Green River District, and we now have a full-time district manager, Elijah Waters. He comes to us out of Colorado, Craig, Colorado. The field manager in Vernal, who's my boss, Roger Bankert, retired a month ago or so. So he's gleefully enjoying being with grandkids in Wyoming. So Elijah has floated an interest announcement to have someone in a detail behind or in that position. That hasn't been, I don't know if he's gotten the names yet of who those are, but currently I'm also the acting field manager in the Vernal field office as well. So my meetings have more than doubled. So if there's stuff you guys are lacking from me, I apologize, but it's just a time management thing. Couple of projects that I thought might be of interest to some or all of you here. There are some operators who have been interested in a cadastral survey along the Duchesne River that BI has been asking for. Our cadastral office is in our state office. They had to work out some funding details with BI, but all that's in place. That survey should start probably after the first of the year. The surveyor who's going to be doing it is actually housed in our building in Vernal. So hopefully that'll be moving forward. I guess the other thing that I thought might be of interest is where our office stands on permitting of some pipeline projects. Kinder Morgan has the Green River Pipeline Project. That one, we had to make some adjustments on the NEPA analysis to include what NEPA thought was a connected action. So that one was pretty much done. It's might be another month or so now before we can finish it, if all goes well. The Uinta Wax has a pronghorn pipeline project as well. That one, I do have the NEPA to me for review and signature. I just needed to resolve some things in the decision record, and I think I got that figured out this morning. We have two other bigger pipeline projects. One I don't know that we're very far along, and that's would go from where Uinta Wax joins into another pipeline. We also had one that would lead pipelines up to the power plant. And right now, we're waiting on feedback from informal consultation from Fish and Wildlife Service, and we should be able to complete that NEPA project. So that's, unless there's questions, I'll try to answer them if you do. I'm sure there's plenty. But are there any questions by anybody that they might have of me? Thank you.
Any more comments from the group back here?
It's been a while since I've been up in front of you guys. I thought it was time for me to get up here. Thank you for putting this together. I'm Nathan Hall. I'm the district engineer for DEQ, so Department of Environmental Quality. I live in the Uinta Basin, and I'm the boots on the ground guy for DEQ for spills. So I know a lot of you because we've worked on spills and worked with a lot of the government agencies on cleanups. And there's just been a lot of turnover, and I haven't stood up in front and introduced myself in a while, so I thought I would do that. We are working on updating our spills response policy, and we have a new spills database. So at some point in the future, in the next year or so, maybe I can do a presentation on that once we get all the kinks worked out. And let me know if you have any questions, and I can take any now, or you can visit with me after.
Thanks, Nathan. Yep. Any other comments? Oh, Rikki.
Thanks. I'm just going to stay here if y'all don't mind. Just a reminder that UPA's annual meeting is coming up March 17th and 18th. I know that seems far away, but with the legislative session coming, that'll be here before we know it. So March 17th and 18th at Sundance Resort. You're all invited. You don't have to be a member. We are welcoming non-members as well, and we would love to see you all there. You can find details on our website. Registration will officially open January 1st, but our room block is already up. We always run out of rooms at Sundance. So if anyone is interested in coming, I would encourage you to get your room booked early. We hope to see many of you there. Thank you.
Not seeing any more, I just want to let everyone know that we sure appreciate your attendance here today. We want to thank our technical staff back in the corner. They come out here the night before, get this set up, and it's just smooth as silk. So we appreciate that. Also our division staff putting this meeting together, and our presenters. I think we had great presentations. We learned a lot today. And just want to note that our next meeting will be March 20th, so you can make a full week of that. You can go to Rikki's meeting and then come up here. Yeah, so after that, we'll close this meeting, let you know lunch is provided by Barefoot Bakers, a local caterer. We have wraps and pasta salad, both gluten-free, veggie options. So with that, we'll close our meeting and express our gratitude for coming. Thanks.